Look at me, I'm
As fate would have it, two of the preeminent athletes of our generation, Odell Beckham Jr. and Kawhi Leonard, are dealing with injury woes and trade rumors in the same time span. Both, in fact, would just as soon forget the most recent seasons, the former missing 12 games with the Giants last year after suffering a fractured ankle, and the latter missing all but 9 Spurs games in 2017-18 with a bad quad that has befuddled his coach and others. Sporting News asked a few of its writers to chime in on the situations in this roundtable discussion. What are the odds either gets traded? Tad Heislip, NFL editor. The more the Giants drag Beckham's name through the muddy waters that are trade rumors, the more of a potentially toxic situation they create. The problem for now is the asking price. New York wants too much in return, and a potential trade partner would have to pay Beckham too much for a long-term deal. With that said, Beckham still is more likely to be traded than Leonard, who plays for one of the NBA's premier franchises and the one that traded for him on draft day. Jordan Greer, NBA editor. The Spurs have done this before with star players. Tim Duncan nearly left San Antonio for Orlando back in 2000, which sounds crazy now, and LaMarcus Aldridge requested a trade this past off-season. There's always the possibility coach Greg Popovich sits down with Leonard after the season, laughs off the supposed drama and finds common ground on a new deal. A trade can't be ruled out entirely, but it would still be surprising. Beckham's situation feels much more volatile at this point, and the Giants could reach a breaking point soon. Matt Lutowski, fantasy writer. The odds are even on Beckham, lower for Leonard. Beckham's price, both in terms of what a team has to give up to acquire him and what a team has to pay him to retain him, is way too high right now given the risk. There's always someone willing to take a chance on a mercurial superstar, but either the Giants, Beckham, or both will have to scale back their demands. For Leonard, it doesn't make sense for the Spurs to trade him if he's healthy, or for him to want to leave. From the Spurs' perspective, he's too talented to let leave. From Leonard's perspective, there's way too much money on the table that only the Spurs can offer him. Unless the relationship is irreparably strained and Leonard doesn't care about the money, it's tough to imagine a trade happening. It would be difficult for San Antonio to get fair value back, and the organization has shown in the past it's not going to simply give away a disgruntled star for pennies on the dollar. Which guy stands to gain the most if traded? Tad Heislip. Beckham. A team working to trade for him would need a long-term deal in place, and Beckham has said he wants to become the highest-paid player, not just receiver, in football. Not that he'll get it, but those are the demands we're working with here. Leonard, on the other hand, would lose money if traded, because the Spurs have the ability to pay him the most possible on a max contract. Jordan Greer. Beckham, not so much because of what he can gain, but because of what Leonard can lose. Leonard plays for one of the most successful franchises in NBA history and arguably the greatest coach the league has ever seen. But it's not just what Leonard could give up on the court, there is a huge financial component. The Spurs could offer Leonard a supermax contract worth $219 million to keep him in San Antonio through 2024. That is a significant advantage over every other team. Beckham could easily find a better situation. Leonard, that's less certain. Matt Lutowski. It's Beckham, and it's not close. Leonard automatically loses out on tens of millions of dollars, or at least the chance at it, by not signing his next contract with the Spurs. On top of that, Leonard will likely go to at least a marginally worse situation in terms of coaching and surrounding talent. He might want out of San Antonio bad enough that it won't matter to him, but leaving one of the best organizations in sports is a risk. It might sting Beckham to leave a high-profile place like New York, but he'll be a marketable star wherever he goes. The Giants aren't particularly competitive right now, so even if he goes to a worse team initially, it's not a huge step down. Who's the better athlete? Tad Heislip. Beckham is phenomenal, no doubt, but his only exceptional trait is his ability to catch the football. That, of course, is his primary job as a wide receiver, so it works for him. Leonard has many jobs on the basketball court, and he does all of them at an all-NBA level. Considering the size difference and the all-round ability of Leonard in his sport, we doubt Beckham would be an effective pass rusher, for example. The NBA star is the answer. Jordan Greer. Leonard possesses a rare blend of strength, quickness, length and instincts. Put it all together, and there's a reason he is one of the most feared perimeter defenders in the NBA. However, if we are talking about pure athleticism, Beckham is on a different level. This is a guy who likely could have become a professional track and field soccer star if he had followed a different path. He can even boot field goals through the uprights from 40+ yards out. Give the dude a cricket bat and he'd figure it out. Everything comes to him naturally, so Beckham is the choice here. Matt Lutovsky. It's almost impossible to make this comparison, but the bottom line is if both are fully healthy and you held a draft with every player in the NBA available and a draft with every player in the NFL available, Leonard would go much higher in the NBA draft than Beckham would in the NFL draft. Even if you narrow it down to just wide receivers, Beckham might go lower than Leonard would in an all-NBA draft. Again, this isn't really a fair comparison given how different the sports are, but it's more than reasonable to say Leonard is better at basketball than Beckham is at football. However, if you want to use the position argument, consider Leonard a small forward. At best, you'd have to rate him behind LeBron James and Kevin Durant. The only receivers you'd rate ahead of Beckham are Antonio Brown and Julio Jones. When Beckham is healthy, you can make an argument he's better than both those guys on any given Sunday. His numbers through the first 3 years of his career certainly suggest it. But that's not even what makes him a better athlete than Leonard. It's the fact he's, well, more athletic. The son of a former SEC running back and track standout, Beckham excelled in basketball and track as well as football. Go on YouTube and watch him, at 5'11", throwing down dunk contest-worthy slams, pitching softballs overhand straight down the pipe for strikes and smacking home runs. As a kid, he was also offered the opportunity to try out for U.S. junior national soccer team, but declined. Peep his skills on the pitch, kicking it around with Bayern Munich's first team. Even if you think Leonard is better at his sport, which is highly debatable, Beckham is probably better at every other sport, and thus the superior athlete. Who's the bigger health risk going forward? Tad Hislop. Beckham's ankle injury came from what many would call a dirty play. So that injury in isolation compared to Leonard's lingering issues is not a big deal. Leonard needing to seek advice outside his own organization regarding his recovery is a concern, for sure. But the bottom line is Beckham plays a sport in which injury is inherent. Football players, regardless of position, are perpetual health risks more so than players in any other sport. Jordan Greer. Through 7 seasons, Leonard has played more than 70 regular season games only twice, and this mysterious quad injury leaves more questions than answers about his future. It seems as though the issue is more about his comfortability than the damage to his quad, so it should worry the Spurs, or any potential trade suitors down the road. But Tad nails the main point: basketball isn't football. Beckham could take a blindside hit to the head or have a safety go low on that ankle. There's always more risk with that much contact on every play. Matt Lutovsky. Leonard's injury is more worrisome given how long he's been dealing with it. It's apparently a bit of a medical mystery, which is about as bad of a 2-word phrase as anyone can hear. Beckham's ankle injury could certainly become a recurring problem, especially given that he plays a much more violent game, but for now, he's expected to make a full recovery. Who has the potential to sell more tickets? Tad Hislop. Beckham gets the ball maybe 15 times a game. Leonard gets the ball, what, quadruple that amount in a game? In part because of simple visibility. Basketball games provide fans in attendance a more intimate sports experience than football games held in stadiums that seat more than 60,000 people. The NBA and its 13-man roster is a star-driven league. The NFL and its 53-man roster, for the most part, is a team-driven league. The answer is Leonard. Jordan Greer. NBA stars have a strong advantage here because of their immense impact on the game, the use of social media for both worthy causes and ridiculous comments, and their ability to be seen without a helmet. Facial recognition makes a difference. But think about it. Most people would recognize Beckham, right? He has a distinct look, and if you haven't seen him on the football field, you've caught his photo in a tabloid magazine or spotted him shirtless on a yacht. And how many fans are lining up to see Leonard shoot mid-range jumpers the same way they wait to watch Beckham's catch display before a game or a training camp? Leonard is a quiet superstar, and he has all the talent to change a team's win trajectory. For better or worse, though, Beckham isn't just a wide receiver, he's a one-man show, a source for hot takes and one of the few NFL guys who wouldn't be out of place in the wacky NBA world. Matt Lutowski, people can go to basketball games to watch a specific player. Plus, there are more games and ticket prices are cheaper. So, while Leonard isn't exactly the type of player you think of fans flocking to see because of his highlight dunks or undeniable charisma, he could very well be personally responsible for more butts in the seats than Beckham. Still, there's no doubt Beckham's presence adds excitement to any game he plays in and any team he's on, so perception-wise Beckham is probably the answer here. Nick Birdsong. Leonard is a flat-out stud in the NBA, but he has the personality of the chair I'm sitting in, which hinders his star power and marketability, especially to novices. Beckham is a rock star in New York City. He gives the people a show between the lines and an even better one when he gets into the end zone. Beckham's the clear choice here. Who's more likely to win a championship if he stays put? Tad Hyslop, Leonard, although the Golden State Warriors and Houston Rockets probably would disagree. The Giants are on the verge of a rebuild with a new head coach, a new general manager and an aging Eli Manning. As long as arguably the greatest basketball coach in history is roaming the sideline, the Spurs are the better bet as a championship contender. Jordan Greer, this is all Leonard. The Spurs will lose the 50-win season streak this year after 2 decades of dominance, but they are still in position to make the playoffs yet again despite the top player missing essentially the entire season. The West is brutal at the top, but no one wants to play the Spurs in a 7-game series. The Giants have missed the playoffs 5 of the last 6 seasons and must bounce back after a 3-13 campaign with a quarterback near the end of his run. Sad Eli face here. It's tough to visualize a road to the Super Bowl for New York. Matt Lutowski, a healthy Leonard puts the Spurs in the upper tier of the NBA, and even with Houston and Golden State, and whatever team LeBron is on, seemingly separating themselves from the pack, it would only take one good free agent signing by San Antonio, one injury to a key member of the Rockets or Warriors for the Spurs to be in the championship mix again. Things can change fast in the NFL, but it's tough to imagine the Giants seriously competing for a title without better QB play, and that will probably take at least 3 years to develop, never mind all the other holes on New York's roster. Who's more likely to make the Hall of Fame? Tad Hyslop, Leonard has a pretty significant head start here given his finals performances against LeBron James-led Heat teams, including a finals MVP. Beckham's case as of now consists of impressive early career numbers and a handful of all-time highlight reel catches. If Leonard can stay healthy and remain the focal point of his team, he's the better bet. Even if Beckham ends his career with Hall of Fame caliber credentials, he always could be given the Terrell Owens treatment by Pro Football Hall of Fame voters. And due to his position, he'll never be considered the biggest reason for his team's success. Jordan Greer, Leonard will turn 27 in June. He has plenty of prime years left if he remains healthy, but here's what he's done so far: 2-time All-Star, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 4-time All-Defensive Team, 2-time All-NBA, 2014 NBA Champion and 2014 NBA Finals MVP. He has already checked a lot of huge boxes. And as Tad notes, Leonard won't be dealing with the off-the-field argument like Beckham. That gives Leonard much better odds. Matt Lutowski, Leonard already has several key components for a Hall of Fame case: a ring, a Finals MVP, multiple Defensive Player of the Year awards, and multiple All-NBA appearances. Unless Leonard's injury problems completely derail his career, he's well on his way to Springfield. Beckham could easily end his career with gaudy, Hoff-caliber numbers that are too good to ignore, but unless he starts piling up some playoff victories and stops being seen as a distraction, it might not matter. Nick Birdsong, one might be able to argue Leonard might have already done enough to be a Hall of Famer. The bar is pretty low for the Basketball Hall of Fame. If he continues on the trajectory he's on, he's a virtual lock. Beckham has had a blistering start to his career, but the potential for re-injury in football is so high. We have to see if he returns to the form he showed from 2014 to 16 when he gets back on the field this fall. On a scale of 1 to 10, what's the diva factor at play here? Tad Hyslop, for Beckham, it feels like a 12. For Leonard, it shouldn't be very high. It's no coincidence that Beckham trade rumors gained unprecedented momentum in the wake of the video that surfaced showing the wide receiver doing questionable things. If that doesn't count as diva behavior, fighting a kicking net on the sideline or punching a wall after a loss certainly does. Leonard is known as the NBA's quiet superstar. Most divas are not quiet. Jordan Greer, there's not much evidence to support the theory that Leonard is the NBA's version of Mariah Carey. It's hard enough to get the guy to open up about basketball. The diva factor is probably in the 2.5 to 3 range only because of the lack of communication between Leonard's camp and the Spurs. That has caused some friction, but it hasn't destroyed the relationship. On the other side, Beckham is a star wide receiver. Being a diva kind of comes with that package, doesn't it? Matt Lutowski, Beckham is a 10 on the diva scale. That's been scientifically proven, and it's undoubtedly a big part of the problem. Leonard is probably a 5, but it's tough to say because he never speaks. Either way, his divaness really has nothing to do with whether he'll be traded. Nick Birdsong, I'm not a big fan of calling any grown man a diva, but on the surface, Beckham is the easy answer here. However, he's never willingly sat out while his team has a chance to contend after being cleared to play. Leonard doesn't talk much nor does he showboat the way Beckham does, but the fact he's not out there competing says a lot about his priorities. Who has the better reason for wanting out? Tad Highslop, Beckham doesn't necessarily want out, he just wants a raise sooner rather than later. That said, if money is the reason the WR ends up getting himself traded, Leonard has the better reason. If the apparent trust issues with the organization are legitimate, that's something no max contract can fix. Jordan Greer, it's hard to argue Beckham should be the highest paid player in the NFL, especially when he can't throw the ball to himself. His on-field impact is limited by his position. He has made his desire clear, but it's not necessarily a good reason. If Leonard and the Spurs truly can't agree on how Leonard's injury and future should be handled, and that's still a big if at this point, then that fundamental difference of opinion would be a strong reason to separate. Popovich has repeatedly referred to Leonard's group or team when asked about his status, putting the onus back on Leonard. The two sides aren't trading petty shots, but there are some warning signs. Matt Lutowski, if Leonard truly feels he's been wronged by the Spurs organization, both in terms of how the medical staff handled his injury and how Greg Popovich and Spurs players have publicly called him out, questioned him, then he has the better reason, despite all the money he'd be leaving on the table. Beckham could very well have problems with the Giants organization, but Leonard's issues with the Spurs seemingly run deeper. What are the best, realistic landing spots? Tad Highslop, the winds of Beckham trade rumors seem to have blown across the entire country, literally, from Los Angeles to New England. But a team like the 49ers or Colts, who have enough cap space to give him the deal he wants and have established quarterbacks in place, would be ideal. As for Leonard, his options are much more open. Basically any team with the ability to bring on a max player and promise him a place on a competitive team will be a possibility. Jordan Greer, it's safe to say several teams would be interested in acquiring Leonard, but in a hypothetical trade, the Celtics make a great deal of sense. Adding another all-star caliber wing scorer and defender alongside a fully healthy Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving could give Boston a lineup that would make even LeBron James do a double take. The Spurs could receive a package of young players, guys like Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum and Terry Rozier would be on the table, plus additional draft picks. As for Beckham, the 49ers could, as John Malkovich's character in Rounders would say, pay the man his money. It wouldn't hurt to give young QB Jimmy Garoppolo a top target, either. Matt Lutowski, both of the respective next contracts make them difficult for any team to employ, but you can bet both will still be in high demand. Can you get Leonard to Philadelphia to add some veteran leadership to that young talented core? How about to Utah, where he would form a 1-2 defensive punch with Rudy Gobert that would make life miserable for any opposing offense? How about a homecoming to the Lakers? For Beckham, both San Francisco and Indianapolis are viable, potentially exciting spots given the young, talented quarterbacks. For entertainment purposes, let's hope he somehow winds up in Dallas.